Greetings, viewer. I'm truly thankful you landed on my video today. If you decide to subscribe, that would mean the world to me. But let's not stall. Let's begin. The door clicked shut behind her with the gentle finality of a lie whispered too many times. Cassandra Alden didn't look back. Her designer suitcase rolled behind her like a loyal shadow, its polished wheels catching the glow of the porch light. Her heels struck the wooden steps with rhythmic precision. A sound rehearsed, but empty. A parade without purpose. Her phone buzzed inside her coat pocket. She didn't check. She didn't need to. She already knew who it was. Back inside, Elijah Alden stood in the doorway she'd just walked through. Arms crossed, jaw clenched. He wore an old flannel shirt, sleeves bunched at the elbows like he'd just finished fixing something around the house. It still smelled faintly of cedar and oil, ghosts of a life shaped by effort and time. But Elijah hadn't fixed anything in a long while. Now, he simply observed the quiet dismantling of what they had. When Cassandra had brought up her leadership summit in Denver, he hadn't protested. He hadn't questioned the late-night packing or the strange blazer she draped over her suitcase. And now, with the silence settling like dust, Elijah stood motionless, the way someone does when they've stopped expecting answers. He didn't stop her from leaving. That said everything. Once the Uber had turned the corner and vanished into the night, he walked to the kitchen. His steps were controlled, methodical. From the back of a drawer near the spices, he pulled out an old leather wallet. Not for money, but for remembrance. Tucked inside was a weathered business card. The edges were curled, the ink fading. Randall York, private investigator. His brother, Henry, had given it to him more than 10 years ago, right after Henry's marriage had crumbled under the weight of neon-lit motels and a yoga teacher named Vince. "You probably won't need it," Henry had said with a dry laugh. "But if you ever do, use it before it's too late to matter." Elijah wasn't laughing now. He picked up the landline Cassandra never touched and dialed a number etched into memory. The voice that answered was sharp and unfazed. "York Investigations. Randall speaking." "This is Elijah Alden," he said calmly. "My wife just left for a business trip. I need to know who she's actually meeting. And I want the proof before Saturday." A short pause. Then Randall replied, "Standard tracking. I'll need a photo, itinerary, and any details you've got. Email is easiest." "I already scanned everything," Elijah replied, settling into the worn leather of his office chair. "She left it all on my desk, like she wanted me to find it." His tone was void of feeling. Every emotion had been shut off, like flicking a breaker on a failing power grid. Once the call ended, he didn't lash out. He didn't break down. Instead, he returned to the living room, drew the blinds, and watched the street outside. On the surface, everything looked untouched. Trimmed lawns, kids riding their bikes carefree and helmetless. The world played its part. But Elijah, a man who once built homes for a living, knew what others often forget. Even flawless beams can hide the crack that eventually splits them in two. And Cassandra, she hadn't left like someone conflicted. She walked out like someone who had already excused herself long before the crime. Inside, Elijah sat at the kitchen table, the same table they'd haggled for at a flea market 15 years earlier. He reached into the drawer near the stove and pulled out a napkin, folded neatly, a reservation code scribbled across it. It wasn't for Denver, not even remotely close. It was for a 5-star coastal resort in Florida, known for its coral sunsets and chilled champagne on arrival. Elijah stared at the napkin for a moment, then opened his laptop. He drafted a message to Randall. "She's gone. Attached are her photo and the hotel confirmation. Track everything. If she's innocent, I'll pay double." He hit send, closed the lid, and sat still for a long time. 5 minutes, maybe more. The storm hadn't arrived yet, but Elijah could already feel its charge humming through the silence. By Thursday, the report came. A plain subject line lit up his inbox. "Delivery confirmation. Case number 2713. Elijah was outside, fixing the backyard gate hinge when it came in. His hands were coated in dust and rust, but he didn't stop to clean them. This wasn't a moment for ceremony. He opened the email. Inside was a brief clinical summary, timestamps, photographs, and a detailed list of expenses. No flourishes, no opinions, just the bare, unwavering truth. Cassandra had never gone to Denver. She flew to Clearwater Beach, Florida, booked under her own name, listed as her guest, David Kessler. Her boss, the department head. The same man who once grinned at Elijah during a company barbecue and said, "She's got the sharpest instincts I've ever seen." One photo showed her barefoot on a hotel balcony, swirling white wine in a stemmed glass. David stood beside her, his hand casually resting on the curve of her back, as if it belonged there. Another showed them at dinner, laughing over oysters, her lips brushing his jawline. The hotel receipt itemized a $163 romance package, anniversary special. Elijah zoomed in. Her wedding ring still sparkled on her finger. But it no longer meant anything. He closed the laptop gently, like handling a live wire. Then he went to the laundry room. Behind the detergents sat a locked metal box. Inside, deeds, legal documents, and the prenup they'd signed 2 decades ago. Cassandra had once rolled her eyes at it, called it a parachute for people planning to crash. Elijah had insisted, and she'd signed. Clause 7b. Infidelity by Cassandra Alden shall forfeit any claim to marital assets acquired during the union, including property, vehicles, and investments held in Elijah Alden's name. He pulled out the document, reread it, and laid it flat on the dining table. Then he picked up his phone and called someone he hadn't spoken to in over 10 years. "Lillian," he said, "it's Elijah. I need a favor." The line was quiet. Then a woman's voice, worn, familiar, unsurprised. "Cassandra." He didn't answer. "She did something, didn't she?" the voice asked gently. Still he remained silent. "I'll be there Saturday night," Lillian said at last, "and I'll bring my badge, just in case." That night Elijah didn't sleep. He lay on the side of the bed she used to occupy, eyes fixed on the ceiling. He imagined the echo of her laughter down hotel hallways, David Kessler's soft voice telling her she was special, deserving more. Maybe she believed it. Maybe she just wanted to be wanted again. But she'd miscalculated one thing. Real men don't chase illusions. They stand still. And when the illusion shatters, they're the ones left standing. Sunday came cloaked in golden stillness, the kind of evening where every window glows from within, and even sorrow can look like something sacred. Scooters darted off driveways in the neighborhood, porch chimes whispered in the breeze, and sprinklers ticked out lazy, looping patterns across lawns. But within the walls of the Alden home, the air was heavy and unmoving. The dining room table had been cleared of anything casual or comforting. In its center, a tan folder, a crisply folded envelope, and a prenup document. At the head of the table sat Elijah, poised, still. His quietness wasn't cold, only judicial, like a judge awaiting the opening of a trial. To his left, Lillian Kane sat silently. Once the girl next door and his closest friend, she now carried herself with the quiet authority of a veteran detective. Though off duty, her badge rested unobtrusively on her hip. She wasn't there to enforce the law. She was present because she was the only person Cassandra couldn't beguile or bend. A witness with no allegiance. Across from her sat Vivian Clark, Cassandra's mother. Her features calm, her navy blouse modest, a trembling teacup delicately balanced in her grip. She held it as if it anchored her more than the chair beneath her. Though her hands shook faintly, her eyes stayed fixed on the garage door. Right at 6:41 p.m., the mechanism buzzed, and the door slowly lifted. Moments later, the sound of heels echoed on the hardwood floor. Cassandra entered, sunglasses perched regally on her head, her scarf tied with stylish precision. She stopped short, eyes darting from Elijah to Lillian, then to her mother. She didn't offer a greeting. "Elijah," she said carefully, "what is this?" He didn't respond, just gestured to the vacant chair before him. "Sit," he said. She paused. "Did someone die?" Lillian lifted one eyebrow. Only if you count the truth, she said coolly. Cassandra's expression hardened, but she made her way to the chair. Her movements were sharp, deliberate. She fussed with her sleeve, adjusted her position, crossed her legs again. "Can someone tell me what's going on?" she demanded. "Why is my mother here?" Vivian's voice broke the silence, soft but edged with steel. "To hear what you've been doing behind your husband's back." Cassandra blinked, the polished surface of her composure faltering. Elijah nudged the folder across the table. "Open it." She didn't move. "I'm not playing whatever this is," she said evenly. "No," he replied. "You've been acting." Lillian remained wordless, but her presence felt increasingly weighty. Cassandra reached out and flipped open the folder. At the top were photographs, one of her on a hotel balcony, wine glass in hand, with David Kessler behind her. Another captured his hand resting on her hip. Beneath the photos, printed reservations for couples, spa visits, private dinners, champagne orders. Her jaw clenched. "This is a disgusting invasion," she snapped. "You had me followed?" Vivian interjected before Elijah could. "You cheated on your husband and lied to your family. You don't get to cry foul now." Cassandra stood up, slamming the folder shut. "This is a setup." Lillian's voice came low but unshakable. "Sit down, Cassandra." The tone cut through the room like a blade. Cassandra obeyed, her hands balled into fists. "So I'm the villain now?" she said through gritted teeth. "For having a few drinks with my boss on a work trip?" Elijah drew the document closer to him. "Scroll down to the email," he said. Then, reading aloud, his voice was steady and clear. "These past few days were amazing. I keep thinking about Wednesday night. Next time, no panels, no business, just us." Cassandra's throat tightened. Her reply came out weak. "That doesn't prove—" "It proves plenty," Elijah cut in, "and you did all of it while wearing my ring, pretending we were fine." Vivian's voice cracked slightly as she added, barely audible, "You stood in my kitchen and lied to my face." Another silence settled. Elijah slid a white envelope toward Cassandra. "This is your official notice to leave," he said, "effective immediately." Her eyes widened. "You can't be serious." "I am." Cassandra hovered her hands over the envelope like it might bite. She blinked quickly, trying to assemble a mixture of shock and scoffing disbelief. "You're throwing me out?" she scoffed. "You've lost your mind." Vivian turned her head away, her face tight with scorn. Lillian hadn't moved. She didn't have to. Her stillness spoke volumes. Elijah leaned forward slightly, his voice quiet and resolute. "This isn't punishment, Cassandra. This is execution of what you already agreed to." He pushed the prenuptial agreement forward, solid and final as a verdict. Clause 7B, infidelity. You relinquished your claim to the house the moment you chose him over us. With shaking hands, Cassandra tore open the envelope. She skimmed the contents, her face draining of color. Her posture sagged. It wasn't just a letter. It had legal weight, notarized, filed, co-signed, a contract she had long ignored, now come to collect. "You used to fix leaky sinks and build shelves," she said, voice barely more than a breath. "Now you're setting traps?" Elijah tilted his head slightly. "I used to fix everything, Cassandra. Then I realized the leak was you." Her mouth fell open. Her pride, visibly wounded, cracked further. She turned sharply to her mother. "Mom, really? You're okay with him tossing me out like I'm some stranger?" Vivian's voice was ice. "You were always welcome until you became someone I don't recognize." Cassandra stood again, fists clenched at her sides. "This is emotional blackmail." "No," Elijah said gently. "This is the price of your decisions." She tried another angle. "I was lonely, Elijah. You stopped talking to me. You sat in silence building birdhouses and called that love." He didn't blink. "And while I did that, you were packing lingerie I'd never seen and sharing champagne I never bought." That stopped her. A silence more oppressive than the last one settled around them. Then Lillian stood, her voice even and cool. "Also, HR at your firm's been informed. The tip was anonymous. They're already reviewing everything." Cassandra's head snapped in her direction. "You went after my job?" No, Elijah answered. Your company has a conduct policy. The evidence spoke for itself. They reached out to us, he added. The folder's contents remained untouched. Dinner receipts, hotel confirmations, emails, all tracing a path straight to David Kessler. Her voice faltered. David will handle this, she said, more to herself than anyone. Vivian gave a sharp, mirthless laugh. David's cutting you loose. Cassandra's phone buzzed. She checked it. No missed calls, no texts, just one email. Subject: administrative suspension pending internal review. Her hands shook. Elijah, she said, her voice stripped of all pretense. No longer angry, just empty. I didn't want it to end like this. No, he said, steady as ever. You just didn't want to get caught. That's not the same. By morning, pale sunlight slipped across Cassandra's childhood bedroom. She hadn't slept. She sat upright on a narrow twin mattress where old posters of boy bands curled at the edges, and the air carried a faint, sad perfume of dried roses and lost time. She had cycled all night between anger and disbelief. Her phone stayed cold in her palm. No messages, not even a half-hearted emoji from David. The silence had become unbearable. At exactly 9:15 a.m., Cassandra stepped into her office parking garage like a shadow revisiting the ruins of her former life. Her scarf was cinched tightly around her throat, oversized sunglasses veiling most of her face. They offered little more than a fragile shield against the truth pressing in. She reached toward the scanner. Her ID badge failed to register. She tried again. Still nothing. Through the glass doors just inside the lobby, the receptionist, Kyle, spotted her. His steps toward the entrance were slow, uncertain, as though he wished he could stay put. Mrs. Alden, he said softly, his voice touched with a trace of apology. There's been a change. Her chest tightened. What kind of change? You've been placed on administrative leave, he explained, choosing his words with deliberate care. It became effective this morning. HR sent out a company-wide memo. Your access has been disabled. I'm sorry. She didn't answer right away, just stared at him, frozen in disbelief. Her fingers clenched tighter around the straps of her handbag. Where is David? Kyle avoided her eyes. Instead of answering, he handed her a plain manila envelope. She tore it open, hands trembling slightly, and unfolded the contents. An official HR letter. It detailed allegations, ethical violations, inappropriate relationships in the workplace, and a pending internal review. Her name, Cassandra Alden, was there in bold. So was David Kessler's. Her breath snagged in her throat, tears welled in her eyes. Without speaking, she turned and walked slowly back toward her car. Across town, Elijah stood patiently at a bank counter. He held a different kind of envelope, this one thinner, lighter. Without a word, he handed it to the teller. His face was calm, unreadable. Inside were critical documents, a revised deed placing the house in his name alone, an updated will removing Cassandra as his medical decision-maker, and signed requests to close every shared bank account. Each page marked the quiet end of something. Only one name remained on every line: Elijah Alden. By early afternoon, the home no longer bore any trace of her. Her belongings had already been sorted, packed, labeled, and transported to a storage unit, prepaid through the beginning of the year. The movers were scheduled for Tuesday. There would be no return. Even her wristwatch was gone. Elijah stood in the middle of the now vacant living room. Dust turned lazily in the sunbeams. Above him, the ceiling fan whispered in its usual rhythm, constant and steady, like a heart relearning how to beat alone. No tears, no smile. He simply stood there, rooted in a new version of his life, one that required no apologies, for loving too long someone who never truly gave it back. That evening, Cassandra's phone buzzed, but it wasn't David. It was her attorney. I've reviewed the prenup, he told her. There's very little room to contest. She inhaled sharply. So, it's all his? There was a pause before he replied. He already has everything. She slowly lowered herself to the carpet of her childhood bedroom. The wallpaper peeled softly at the edges. The room smelled faintly of old memories. She had once seen herself as invincible, the brilliant strategist, the irreplaceable asset, the woman who always had a choice. But in the end, each title had been quietly taken. No screaming, no slammed doors, no begging. Elijah had chosen a different kind of ending. He made sure she watched her own unraveling, and he did it with witnesses. And so this chapter closes. We'd love to hear what you think in the comments. Thanks for joining us. And if this story resonated with you, be sure to explore more on our channel. Until next time, dear friend.